The presentation's name is There's No Easy Button, Software's Dirty Little Secrets. So let me go ahead and get started here. Real quick, just some information about me. I've been doing this for about 36 years. I've worked for 2 state highway departments. I've done everything from inspect construction projects to design bridges to run and develop websites, program various things, so on and so on. So my whole career, I've actually had to use the stuff that you see sold and put out there all over the world. Real quick, I do this in any presentation I do just because my bosses do get a little upset at me occasionally. So just let me read this real fast so that I got my butt covered, so to speak. The opinions, no matter how well thought out they are, expressed in this presentation are my own and do not represent the views, policies of the North Carolina Department of Transportation, North Carolina Department of Information Technology, or any other government agency, foreign, domestic, or extraterrestrial. Now, there is always fine print here, and it should, but that's another story, so to speak. Real quick, a little bit about where I live and where I work. This is the state of North Carolina, in case you're not familiar with it. We're located on the eastern part of the United States. You can see the red state outline there. And personally, I'm where that yellow X is right now. I'm in the western part of the state of North Carolina. Our central headquarters is over here in the District Division 4 area in Raleigh. So I live apart from our central office type thing. So I spend most of my time in the field with people that are actually trying to do their job, so to speak. Real quick, some of the things about North Carolina Department of Transportation, so you can see where we sort of come from. We've got over 13,000 bridges in the state. We're responsible for around 80,000 miles of highway. If you want that in kilometers, I've got it somewhere. It's about 128,000 kilometers of road. As you can see, nearly 15,000 miles of that is interstate and primary U.S. routes, which in Europe would generally be considered a motorway. And then 65,000 or so of what we consider secondary roads, which can be anything from a gravel road to even a 4-lane road that we've put in that doesn't quite meet other federal standards. We're also responsible for 33,000 miles or 33,300 miles of railroad. We basically run and maintain 72 airports. We have 21 ferries on the eastern part of the state moving people. So we cover a great deal of transportation, and we do use a lot of software to try to do that. This last slide, and this is important, I think, because it shows you a little bit of our breakdown. We spend over 50% of our money on construction. And if you look at the other breakdown, 17% is administrative, and that also includes our design, our management, our HR, all that kind of stuff. 8% is done in what you would call multimodal stuff. Remember, even though we're a Department of Transportation in the U.S., that means highways. The other stuff, unfortunately, is considered a little bit of a sideshow in certain parts of the country. And then we say we put about 25% of our budget into maintenance. I sometimes find that hard to believe, particularly since I work out in the field. But hopefully this will show you a little bit of a breakdown of where the money really goes. And you notice it all goes to construction. You need to keep that in mind as you buy software and do things. Let me get on with the presentation here real quick. This is really important. A few years ago, I found this, and the report is by an economist named Paul Romer. But the main point here is, I've got a highlight here, and he says it suggests that fundamentally new technologies generally don't become productive until a generation after their introduction. The time it takes people to really learn how to use them and to use them in new ways. And, when I saw this, it was like one of those light bulb moments for me, because this is really true. If you figure a generation is roughly 30 years, it takes roughly about that amount of time for any large new technology to really take hold. Um, for example, I read a lot. I read a lot of magazines. I don't read as many books probably as I should, but I love magazines. And this used to be one of my favorites. It probably was the greatest computer magazine ever written. Called Byte. Hopefully, some of you have seen it or you read it over the years. But in July of 1986, and this, I was just out of college, just starting out my jobs. They ran a whole issue on engineering tools. And I just at the time started in the West Virginia Department of Transportation's bridge section. I was working as a young engineer designing bridges. But this struck me as the engineer's toolbox. The computer was what we were using. And in 1986, we had just gotten our first computer in the structures division due to a flood. A high dollar IBM PC with a color monitor and 10 megabytes of hard disk space, and I think 512 KB of memory. So it was a monster at the time. But I've always loved this picture because it really does show you what the computer is to your average engineer nowadays. Now, most of this stuff, I don't use much. I still use a mouse. I've still got a floppy drive. Pen and pencil are still there, multimeter and that kind of stuff. In my line of work, we don't use, but the tools are all there to do the design, to do the analysis, and to look at these bridges. So keep this in mind as we move forward. So I want to look at just three or four things that you might consider these dirty little secrets. And we'll start first with just 3D design. You hear a lot about BIM. We've already seen a couple presentations on it. You've seen Paul talk about national reports are using technology, digital twin models, all this stuff moving forward. Yet we still don't really do three-dimensional design, at least in the highway business. We've been able to do it. We started to learn it 30 years ago. And you can see, for example, here's a quick little thing of a presentation that was given in 1998 on Alabama using three-dimensional design. So we've done it for a long time, but only now is it becoming useful, roughly that 30 years after the fact. So, people that think BIM and all these things are really wonderful need to come back a little bit and say, we've got to get the basics stuck in there first before we do, move on to the next D, so to speak. So, we're still mainly a two-dimensional world. Our contractors are still mainly a two-dimensional world. And we need to move this 3D design into actual use rather than talking about it, showing all the cool things it can do. But this day-to-day normal use of it is where the technology falls down a little bit to a great deal. And part of the reason it falls down is things like this: collaboration. Every piece of software you see today, every advertisement for BIM, digital twins, all talk about collaboration. How you're going to collaborate on this design. Well, collaboration comes in a couple of forms. One, there's the physical collaboration between engineers and staff and designers. That's always been there, but it's been piecemeal. They collaborate at the beginning of a design, at the 25% mark, the 50% mark, and then the final mark. Software collaboration is the second part of this, and this is where the systems start to fall down. The more complex our computer design tools become, the less likely it seems that they're going to collaborate with other tools. We're starting to see this now more and more as our various software systems become more and more advanced and companies buy more and more products, and they have trouble integrating these products to talk to each other. So collaboration is a piece of the puzzle that while everybody's working on, they just quite haven't figured out yet. Now, with the COVID pandemic that we're seeing, collaboration has taken on a little bit more information. You're seeing it with this presentation here. The use of Zoom, Teams, these collaborative tools have really taken off, whereas before, at least in our industry and my organizations, they were very much resisted. Though there have been some consequences of this, whereas now we collaborate a lot, we almost over collaborate. I mean, I've had days now where I'm in meetings every hour because somebody can schedule them hour after. There's no travel, there's no walking, there's no having to go from building to building, anything like that. So it cuts a little bit both ways. We can collaborate and then we can over collaborate. You've got to be careful with that kind of stuff. We've seen it with a lot of other technologies, from email through the new Teams type stuff that we use today. Next, and this is something that is really becoming a problem. We actually had a major discussion between our units the other day that we don't have the staff to maintain computer systems, particularly engineering systems, because there's no career path for people in engineering who understand the design of bridges, the maintenance complexities of taking care of highways, and learning how to control and deal with software. It's not as easy as people think. There's no easy button, so to speak, when it comes to getting these systems set up, maintained, and working together in a collaborative, easy to use, manageable system. It's just becoming harder and harder. And a large part of that is because we have fewer and fewer people that understand both sides of the technology.
Randy, just giving you a little bit of a time check there. I don't know how much more you have, but
yeah, just one more here. So just real quick, when you're thinking about this, remember, where does the software end and the engineering begin? It's a question you need to think of. And then finally, and we're going to see this pretty soon, we're always told, at least in my industry, do more with less. Well, we've been told that for so many years that now less means less. So when you buy software that tells you it's going to make things easier, allow you to do things faster and quicker, take that with a grain of salt, because it's just one more system. You're going to have to do more with less of it. You probably aren't using the total system that you had before. So, be serious when you do it, because it means you're going to have to make decisions and choices, and that tends to get left off. So with that, I'll go ahead and call it a day. If you need to talk to me, here's my email addresses. Feel free to yell at me anytime you want to. I'm on social media. And with that, thanks for attending.